Hello, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this session of GETDigital. My name is David Kenny. I'm an assistant professor of digital business here at DCU Business School, and I will be your MC for this session. If you've been paying attention so far this week, you'll know that this conference, GETDigital, is about exploring a range of topics related to business, leadership, entrepreneurship, but with a particular focus on how businesses at all stages and of all sizes can harness transformational digital technologies to achieve their business goals. Now, one particular area that's gone through a bit of a hullabaloo in the last year, particularly since COVID appeared on our shores, is e-commerce. And so in this session, I'm very pleased to introduce our speaker, Alan Coleman, who's CEO of the well-known Wolfgang Digital. And Alan is going to be presenting a talk on the 7 essential insights into the state of e-commerce in 2021. So Alan, actually, before I hand over to you, just a reminder to the audience, questions. We love questions. So send in your questions using the Q&A function, not the chat function, all right, the Q&A function. Send them in throughout the talk and we'll get to them at the end. So looking forward to your questions. And now I will hand over to Alan. Alan, over to you. Thank you.
Thanks very much, David. How are you doing, everyone? Delighted to be here with you. Bear with me 1 second while I share my screen. Yes. Okay. Now. Oh, are you guys looking at my cover slide?
Yeah, absolutely.
Excellent. Okay, so thank you very much, David, for the introduction. As David said, I'm going to talk to you about the 7 essential insights into e-commerce in 2021. So I'll give you the rundown first before we dive in. So in number 1, or actually before we jump in, I should say, I know that there's a number of DCU students on the call. It's a great course you do in Wolfgang. I know Rob and Molly here who are helping organize the event. One of their best pals started with us after graduating last year. And I have to say the DCU graduates we've always found to be excellent and very intelligent, very hardworking and very capable. A number of my leadership team in Wolfgang Digital started as trainees directly from DCU. So at the very end of the call, I'll give you the details for our graduate scheme, which is just launching now. Yes, okay, so let's hop in. So insight number 1 is congratulations, you've made a fantastic career choice. So I'll talk to you, give you some stats behind that and what's that going to look like going forward. Number 2, the flagship store is no longer on the high street. The utter dominance of the internet giants is something we're going to talk about as well. Right now we're at the cusp of a societal revolution, and this could be like a decades-long, a century-long change. So we'll have a look at that. As a result of that, our roles in the workplace will evolve. So we're going to talk about the evolving skill set of the digital marketer. In conjunction with that, we're going to talk about the evolving language of marketing. And then we'll build up to our crescendo. And we believe in Wolfgang that this is the beginning of the first-party data era. And so we'll discuss that. So there's some recurring themes you'll see come up through the various topics we talk about. And the different topics will kind of interweave in and out of each other as well. So just before I hop into it, for those who don't know about Wolfgang Digital, we're a gang of digital marketing nerds. There's 55 of us at the minute. I think we're the biggest independent agency in Ireland. We're particularly passionate about performance. That's what it's all about for us, digital marketing driving commercial results. For this reason, we love e-commerce, because with e-commerce, there's a revenue, a euro revenue at the end of any of our activities that we can measure our activities against. So we're really fond of e-commerce. Being passionate about performance, one of the ways we measure ourselves is how are we doing in Wolfgang Digital is awards, international awards. That's how we benchmark ourselves against the competition. So we've a really good haul. One of the award ceremonies in Europe did a leaderboard of the most awarded agencies in Europe over the last number of years, and we actually topped it. So we're a bit Gollum-like when it comes to awards, actually. Like every Wolfganger's ambition is to put an award on the wall. And once they've put an award on the wall, it's, to get a bigger and a better one. So just an overview of some of those awards we've won. We won the best large integrated agency in Europe, and then we retained it. So we're the first agency ever to retain it. In Google's most recent awards, they do these EMEA awards. We were the first ever Irish agency to win an award there. We won Best Search Partner, and then we won the Best Shopping Partner as well. So we were the first Irish winner, and we were the first ever agency to win 2 awards on the one night, because they only have 4. We've been entering the Great Place to Work as well, and we've been moving up that list. I think in the last one we entered, we came around about 5th. So yeah, that's some of the Wolfgang story around awards. We're also big fans of a side project, love a side project, particularly when it comes to e-commerce. So we had a secret side project for a number of years, which we revealed all the way back in 2014. And we've been secretly running a sex toy shop. We've been drop shipping dildos to the 4 corners of Ireland. The reason we did it was to walk a mile in our customers' shoes, to kind of be our own client and see what that looked like. But after doing it for a couple of years, we had so many funny stories, we decided we had to come out of the closet, so to speak, and we became an international media sensation. The Guardian covered it, and it picked up a lot of action. So that was a really fun thing to do for a couple of years. We have a new side project now. Perhaps we've matured a little bit over the years. And the current side project is a social enterprise about reforesting Ireland. So we've been working on it for 3 years, but we actually only launched it at the end of last year. And it's gone fantastic. And we're about 5 months in, and we've got hundreds. We've over 300 subscribers who are now monthly gang members. And we've over 5,000 trees planted from donations just in the first couple of months. So that's flying it. If you watch Nationwide, you might have seen us on there during National Tree Planting Week. So we love side projects, and they're always like, it's the gang, it's the people in Wolfgang that, come up and execute these things. So we feel we learn an awful a lot from them. That's a little bit about Wolfgang. So let's get into the talk. So congratulations, you've made a great career choice. If you're embarking on a career in digital marketing, or if you're already in it, it's a great place to be. So we did an analysis, we do regular analysis of the Irish online economy, and we found that in 21, online spend increased by 159%. Okay, online spend in Ireland up 159% year on year. So that's an economy that's growing really rapidly. Now, it always had been. The average growth rate was 32%. So we saw 5 years growth there. In that 1 year. Now, obviously, it was a pretty unique and a pretty exceptional year. Will that continue, or will we go back to base? I think we'll have that conversation. But before we do that, let's just take time to have a look at the state of e-commerce pre-COVID. So it feels like another lifetime. But if you can cast your mind back to January 2020, like the month before all of this happened. So at that time, in Wolfgang, we were thinking about what were the biggest events of the last decade, of the 2010s? What we came to was we'd witnessed the largest migration in the history of humanity, okay? At the beginning of the 2010s, there were 7 billion people living on the planet Earth, this natural planet that we all inhabit. However, as you all know, we've invented this new digital world. And what happened during the 2010s was 4 billion people I'm just going to move that around, so hopefully you can see better. 4 billion people moved large chunks of their life from planet Earth to this digital world we're all inhabiting. People moved chunks of how they socialize, chunks of how they communicate, chunks of how they shop, and chunks of how they entertain themselves into this new virtual world. Up to this point, it was what sociologists would call voluntary migration. We were electing to do that. And it had been a huge movement of people. Then this happened. And you can remember the first lockdown last March, 2 weeks. How are we going to survive 2 weeks lockdown? And it's gone on a little bit longer than that. And, the streets were deserted. So you actually couldn't go and shop on the high street if you wanted to. So this movement of people changed from being a voluntary movement of people to being an involuntary movement of people. You could say, in a way, people were retail refugees. They simply couldn't spend their money in the shops as they once had. So they were now forced into this new online world. So we were tracking what this meant for product sales, and it was kind of entertaining to witness people's irrationality. In March, everyone was buying bog roll. In April, everyone was buying booze. In May, the bonces and the beards had gotten out of control, so people need shavers. And by June, everyone's thinking about their biceps and their butts, and they're getting fit with the yoga pants. So it was, as I say, entertaining to watch watch it on a product level. But at Wolfgang, we like to look at it in a more macro level. So we were every week releasing an online economy report on what's been happening. And what you can see here, the turquoise line is retail revenue, and the dotted line across the bottom is the pre-corona average. So that's where that was in February, is that the pre-corona average. The yellow line there is the COVID cases. So as you'd expect, COVID cases go up, restrictions get tighter, we all have to shop online, online revenue, and that turquoise line goes up. Then as COVID cases come down, what happened is, you might remember last summer, we almost got back to some sense of normality. The online revenue never dipped below about an 80% increase. So it stayed very, very elevated throughout. But then, as I say, we have that figure for 2021 as a whole, where the average increase across the year was 159%. So the €1 billion question on everybody's lips now is, well, what happens when we're all vaccinated and this thing has run its course? Do we go back to January 2020, or are we in a new trajectory? Are we in a new reality off the back of it? So I think the most interesting historical insight we can talk about here is China. So this is 2018, and this is the e-commerce penetration rate in countries around in 2018, and these are the top 5 globally. So you can see that China is way out in front. China's 30% of retail is happening online. UK, the most advanced Western country, is at 20%. China's still way out in front. South Korea, kind of famously, you know, one of the most connected countries in the world, China's got double the penetration of them. US, where we all think of the home of big tech, you know, China's penetration is 3 times stronger than the US e-commerce penetration. So what happened here? Well, 20 years ago, China experienced the pandemic and had to shut down their society. There was the SARS pandemic. And a lot of commentators will say this was the tipping point. It was at this point that China's e-commerce penetration started ramping up, because they had to run their lives, they had to run their society, they had to run their economy in a virtual world. And that was the point in which China took off and left the rest of us behind from an e-commerce perspective. So I think, armed with this insight, I think it certainly suggests that we're not going back to February 2020's levels, and we're on a new trajectory now when it comes to e-commerce. So the work you do as digital marketers, the work you do in e-commerce is getting more important every year, and will continue to be more important in your organizations as time passes. A mistake a lot of people make, I feel, is they say, oh, we've accelerated 5 years in 1 year. So for me, this ignores the shift in the fundamentals, okay? So let me explain what I mean by this. So let's take a demographic, the over 65s. So in Ireland, the over 65s are the wealthiest demographic, and they have the lowest propensity to shop online, okay? Wealthiest demographic, lowest propensity to shop online. Then the lockdown hit, they all had to cocoon, and we got this really interesting stat from Tesco at the very beginning of the pandemic, that the proportion of, oh, you probably can't read that, I'll read it out for you. The proportion of sales from over 65s quadrupled early doors. Now, you have to remember Tesco's home deliveries also quadrupled. So you're looking at about a 16x to 20x increase in online spend from these over 65s every week. So they're forming new habits. A lot of these would have lived their days without ever always stepping foot in the store, never buying online. They've been forced. They're more than a year into this new life where they're shopping online in a way that they simply never would have otherwise. Fair play to Tesco. They wanted to protect their most vulnerable customers. So they've prioritized the over 65s with those delivery slots. So I don't know what you think about the over 65s. For me, they sold us all our houses for 10 times what they paid for them. Our hard-earned taxes are paying their pensions, and now they're taking our Tesco delivery slots. So I'll move on before I say anything else that might get me in real trouble there. So the point I want to make is new habits beget new habits. So these over 65s that have learned to do their grocery shopping online, the next time they go to buy golf clubs, slippers, pipes, and bling like this granny here, whatever it is they spend their money on, they're more likely to start that journey online with the research phase, and a lot of them will even go ahead and transact online as well. So I would expect that more and more of their spending will make its way online as time passes. So that was insight number one. You're in the right place. Online economy is thundering ahead. Insight number two, the flagship store is no longer on the high street. So we work with a lot of multi-channel retailers. And back in 2019, 2020, this was their view of their business. You know, they'd say, oh, we've got 19 high street shops and we've a website. It's just another store. That's what it does. Around about 2019, Google gave us and Wolfgang early access to a new report they were releasing. We got the European beta. So the first number of retailers who used this, we were rolling it out for them. And what it allowed retailers to do was to see what proportion of their in-store sales had interacted with their website before. So if a retailer had a loyalty scheme, they could give us all their sales transactions and some user identifiers from the people who bought it. We could upload it to Google. We could do it with Facebook as well, and we could tell them, actually, 60% of your in-store sales was somebody who interacted with your website or an ad before they actually went in store. So once they got this information, retailers formed a very different view of their business. They now no longer had a lot of high street stores and an additional store which happened to be online. They now understood that the website is actually the entry point to all of their high street stores. And the more valuable the transaction, you know, the more money someone was going to spend, the more likely they were to interact with the website first. It has completely changed how a lot of our clients viewed their business and viewed the website's role in that. That was before lockdown. Now during lockdown, like if you don't have a good online presence, you're really struggling. Like there's no doubt that the website, certainly in lockdown times, is now the flagship store. Just to verify this, a real world example of this is, you'll all know Topshop went bust recently, and ASOS bought the business, but they didn't want the shops. They're like, we don't want the shops. We'll give you 330 million pounds, and all we want is your website business. So this really illustrates the power. You know, the website is now the flagship store, and quite likely to continue to be post-pandemic. So insight number three, the all-powerful internet giants. I'm sure you've all heard the phrase, nature abhors a vacuum. I'd say technology loves a monopoly. You know, technology just seems to love a dominant player. I guess the network effects kick in, and once one company starts escaping the competition, it's so hard to catch them. So we can see this in search, Google, the dominant player. In social, Facebook are the dominant player. In e-commerce, it's Amazon. If any of you are interested in cryptocurrency, once again, those network effects kick in, and Bitcoin is the dominant player. And technology loves a monopoly. And we're really at kind of peak monopoly at the moment. And just to give you an example of how this plays out, there was a boycott, an advertiser boycott of Facebook in July 2020. So this was the Stop Hate for Profit campaign. Big brands were upset about how people were using Facebook politically, the former president of the United States among them. And the biggest advertisers in America, Coca-Cola, Starbucks, Ford, Gecko, the biggest advertisers in America said to Facebook, we're turning it off for the month of July. And this is our stand against what you're doing. So I was eagerly awaiting the Facebook Q3 results. I was desperate to see, did this actually have an impact on Facebook's revenue for the quarter? And when the results came in, I nearly fell off my chair. Facebook's revenue didn't go backwards, didn't even stall. They grew their revenue by 10%, despite the fact their biggest advertisers turned it off for the month. So what does this tell us? So you'll see in the illustration here, Mark, the devil Zuckerberg's got a long tail of cash there. So what Google and Facebook have done is they've democratized advertising. They've opened up the world of advertising to businesses, large, medium, small, and micro. And it means that they're not as dependent on the big advertisers as the media traditionally was. So what this really illustrates is you can have the biggest advertisers turn off their spend and they can just still continue to grow, which is an incredible demonstration of dominance and power in the industry. So this shows us that the balance of power in our industry, in the marketing industry, is shifting. It's not with the big brands, you know, P&G, biggest advertiser in the world, they were part of that boycott. The power is no longer with the big network agencies, the likes of a Martin Sorrell. The power is now with lunatics like this. So we've our internet giants very much rule the world right now. So this is really important for businesses, and we're probably in a point now where people might need to do a bit of future proofing, or even present proofing. So what we have now is we have big companies here where we can see a screen grab. We can see the Google, Facebook, Amazon, and Apple CEOs at an antitrust hearing in the States. So we have these really dominant players, and they tend to be operating in markets that are now in maturity. So what that means is when these were growth markets, okay, you know, everybody's friends with everyone, it's fine, the market's growing, we're all growing 30, 40, 50% every year, it's great. Once those markets start reaching maturity, it's much harder to continue that growth. And what happens is a monopoly in a mature market starts screwing everyone else over, typically their partners, their customers, everybody. That's just the only way they can continue to satisfy Wall Street, and they have a fiduciary duty. They're legally bound to try and keep growing that 20% a year. Is they start looking at their partners or their customers and their share of the pie and saying, well, we're going to have to take a bite out of that if we're going to hit our 20% earnings this year. So I think that they're going to be seen, you know, they're not really talking about do no evil, make the world a better place anymore, because they know that they're operating under different conditions. Internally in Google, this has never been said externally. I've Googled it and I've never found it. But internally in Google, Sundar Pichai has said their biggest strategic challenge is continuing to scale revenues in a mature market. And this, we're all going to feel this pain. Anybody who's a partner of any of these guys when they need to continue to do that. So the very final insight is how I think you should need to prepare yourself for this eventuality. So next insight, we're at the cusp of a societal revolution. So what on earth am I talking about there? So societal revolutions are basically moments in which we figured out how to increase output, okay? So just take a sip of my tea. So about 20,000 years ago was the agricultural revolution. Humans stopped being nomadic hunter-gatherers, settled down and started farming. Food production increased and the human population increased alongside it. A bit more than 200 years ago, the Industrial Revolution happened. So prior to the Industrial Revolution, production was generally powered by humans or by beasts. And what happened with the Industrial Revolution is we got an artificial power, which could turbocharge production and turbocharge output. So that was 200 years ago, and that was really in manufacturing. The Industrial Revolution dramatically increased the output of the manufacturing industry, but also changed the nature of work. Where we sit right now in 2021 is in Wolfgang, we believe the same thing is happening for the services industry. So just like artificial power was discovered to increase output in manufacturing, artificial intelligence is now at a tipping point to increase output in service industries, and the nature of our work is going to change possibly quite dramatically as a result. So why now? Why in 2021 is this the time this is going to happen? 5G is the answer. So every second iteration of the Gs is transformational. So 1G gave us all mobile phones. We could speak to anyone, anywhere. 3G gave us the smartphone. All the information in the world is now available in our pocket anytime. And 5G is the smart device. So there's now more smart devices in the world than there are people. And smart devices are just constantly collecting data and exchanging data. The other thing that 5G does, so the number one is massive increase in the amount of data being created, or the number two is speed, okay? So when 3G went to 4G, that was a 10x increase in speed. 3G to 4G was a 10x increase in speed. And that gave birth to, without that increase in speed, you couldn't have Instagram, Netflix, TikTok. Videos didn't really work, rich media, you know, just didn't happen. So just that 10x increase in speed was transformational for the internet landscape. From 4G to 5G, it's a 100x increase in speed, 100x increase. So our little minds can barely understand what this is going to do to the world. You know, the Industrial Revolution was never called that at the time. It was only in, you know, many decades later that people looked back at that point and said, oh, wow, artificial power, that changed everything. And I believe we could be at a similar precedent now. Very simply because AI loves two things. For AI to make great decisions, it likes lots of data. And for AI to make great decisions, it needs lots of computing power. And that's precisely what 5G is giving it. So whatever AI is to become, you know, you've lots of, Elon Musk is telling us it's going to kill us all. And other people have very different views of what it will be. Whatever it will become, the technological landscape is now set for it to become that. So who is going to benefit from this? So there's one company that's particularly well positioned to benefit from the AI era, and it's our friends in the big G. So why is that? So at Google's I/O conference in 2017, so this is a really nerdy conference where they get all their developers together, Sundar, the CEO, announced that Google is moving from mobile first to AI first, okay? So you'll probably remember in 2012, Google became a mobile first company, and every year for the next 5 years was the year of mobile. And then finally, it was the year of mobile, and Google switched up to say, all right, now it's all about AI. We're going to be an AI first company. We're going to be the best AI company in the world. So they were stating this in relation to their advertising. They're going to use AI to make their advertising the best advertising the world has ever seen. However, there's evidence that Google were thinking about AI many years before 2017. So all the way back in 2002, there was a conversation as told by Kevin Kelly. So Kevin Kelly is the founding editor of Wired magazine, and he'd be a bit of an internet hero over in Silicon Valley. So when Larry and Sergey were just two upstarts, they met Kevin Kelly at a party in Silicon Valley, and Kevin was a bit cynical as to what they were trying to do. Kevin asked them, a free-to-use web search business, you know, really, how's that going to make you any money? And all the way back in 2002, Larry's response was, oh, we're really building an AI company. So, sorry, I have a kid at the door. He's not here. Apologies. Yeah, so all the way back in 2002, Google were, you know, telling people this is a pre-IPO. They barely had ads on the search engine at this time. And they're saying, oh, we're really building an AI company. So once I read this story, Kevin Kelly tells us, I was blown away. I was there, has Google got a secret plan? You know, have this thing that we've all witnessed, like them building one of the world's most successful companies, was this just a stepping stone to a larger plan? And I got thinking a lot about this. So Google's stated mission is to organize the world's information and make it universally accessible to everyone. But this got me thinking that Google's got a secret mission, and that's to monitor the world's interactions with the world's information, because that's how machine learning learns. So if they've organized all the world's information, And if they position themselves as the gatekeepers between all of us, all the people, and all the information, you couldn't have a better position to be monitoring the interactions and your AI, your machine learning just getting smarter and smarter and smarter and smarter. So this is really interesting. Like, is the Google we know, as I say, simply a stepping stone? So they've absolutely dominated the advertising industry. They've come to dominate it over the last 2 decades, but was this really to put themselves in a position that when the AI era kicks off, they're inescapable? No one can catch up with them. They have an unfair advantage. So what would they be doing if this was their vision 20 years ago, that, oh, we're really just building an AI company. Once the AI era kicks in, we want to dominate that. So what we know is AI loves 2 things. It loves speed and it loves data. So Google have invested, be one of the biggest investments on planet Earth on IT infrastructure. So we'd be pretty confident they've got the speed bit nailed. And then on the data, so, okay, is there evidence that all along in all their activities, all they've been doing is just accumulating the world's biggest data set? So we're going to do an exercise and play a little game here. So you guys can participate in thinking about this. So the first thing Google thought of, at the very beginning is, well, what do we call ourselves? If this was their secret ambition to build the world's biggest data set and to an unfair advantage in the AI era, the first thing they had to do was, come up with their name and start positioning their company. So exercise, if everybody could go to Google, whip out a phone or a laptop or another screen and search what's the biggest number in the world. And once you've got it, if you can put your answers in the chat down below, see if I can see this. Or sorry, in the Q&A, is it? Yeah, in the Q&A, please.
Yeah.
Which I can't actually see. How do I get that up?
You should. Well, if you can't see, I can read them out.
Oh, here it is. Q&A.
Yeah, you see them there?
Yeah. Just while you're there, David, is my view getting in the way of any of the slides?
No.
No, great.
Oh, no. Yeah.
Okay. Google. Brilliant. So you're all getting there. Excellent. So this data company, who it seems have a secret ambition to be an AI company, actually called their company after the largest number in the world. So I'm beginning to think, Jesus, there might be something to this. Was this the game from the very beginning, to try and build the world's biggest data set and have an unfair advantage when the AI era kicks off? So let me just get back to my slides here. Oh, there we go. So you're all getting it to Google. Okay, so let's do another exercise. How many Google products can you name? So I'm going to give you 2 minutes to have a think about how many Google products there are. And then once sure, I'll time it. I'll give you a minute. There's probably plenty. And then I'll ask you to put them in the Q&A again. Just the number. You don't even have to list them, just the number that you can think of.
We should be playing the countdown music. I suspect there's a lot of frantic Googling going on before I can answer to the QA.
Yeah. So that's a minute now. So if people want to put what their best estimate is to how many Google products there are in the Q&A, great. No answers coming in for this one. Anybody want to have a crack? Oh, thanks, James. Ian, wait, 37. Wow, Ian's got data services, 50, yeah, 50 products on top. There's a lot there. Okay, well, thank you for those answers. Ian got closest. There are, let's see, my slide's going to work for me. Over 250 Google products, okay? 250 Google products that have become part of our daily lives. Maps, email, Google Earth, YouTube, the whole shebang. So they've really enhanced all our lives and done it all for free. So on one hand, you could say, oh, the idiots, you know, they've created 250 products, given them that have changed the world, enhanced all our lives, and they never charged anyone a penny for them. But I guess that's the point, is if their intention from the very beginning was to build the world's largest data set, all a price point is a barrier between them and more information. So the thinking behind that, they're just creating these really useful products, giving them away for free. It does seem consistent with a company that's trying to build the world's biggest data set. So I'm going to show you a little video now which shows you how this data set has led them to absolutely dominate the advertising industry. Okay, so hopefully this works. Fingers crossed. YouTube. Oh, is that video playing?
No.
No. Okay, so I'm going to stop the share and I'm going to share again. Now, for some reason, this has gone back to the. Is there YouTube there?
Yeah.
Okay,
Great. Yeah.
Great. So I'll just full screen that. So I'm just skipping to the part in the video, which is going to illustrate to you how gathering all this information has led to really effective advertising.
There's no audio.
No audio.
Just you know, see if did you do the checkbox at the when you share?
Let's try again. I might not have.
No.
Share screen. Oh. So let me give you an example. Perfect. There's two searchers. There's Larry, how are you, Larry? And there's Sergey, how are you, Sergey? Larry and Sergey are both searching exactly the same words, okay? They're both searching hotels in Barcelona. Now, from Larry's perspective, this is the first signal that Google has seen that he's interested in going to Barcelona. Sergey's case is different. Google knows through YouTube that Sergey's been looking at a lot of video content on Las Ramblas. Google knows through Gmail that he actually has a booking confirmation for his flight confirmation with 8 passengers on it in his inbox, and he's going in 2 weeks. Google, when it looks at its search behavior, knows that he's made a lot of searches over the last 8 weeks relevant to Barcelona. If we go so far as to take Google Analytics into account, we could say Google knows through its analytics on Viagogo that Sergey was on the Viagogo website, and through its conversion data, it knows that Sergey has bought 8 tickets to a Barcelona football match. So what we're seeing here is through all those signals, Google has a really clear indication that Larry is at the top of the funnel, considering going to Barcelona. Sergey's about to buy something. Not only is Sergey high intent, but Google has this information that tells him he's traveling with 8 people. He's high value too. And for this reason, Google can bid really aggressively, maybe 10 times, maybe 20 times what it will bid for Larry, knowing that there's money at the end of that click, okay? So this sounds... So that's that. Okay, am I back in my PowerPoint here?
You are, yeah.
Okay, just
check the hit count on that video later today on YouTube.
Hopefully it goes. Okay, so you can see, like, maybe phase one of Google's master plan is we're going to build this huge data set and we're going to build the best advertising product the world has ever seen. Like, they're literally hoovering up money from advertisers all over the world. Let's do another Q&A, right? Another guess. What percentage of global ad spend? So not talking about digital ad spend, but what percentage of global ad spend, online, offline, everything, went to Google in 2020? I'd ask you just to have a guess, or maybe you know, and stick it in the Q&A there, please. Ian, 21.7, very specific. James, 40. Sarah, 60. Sean McDonald, so 10. So Sarah's close to what it is for digital. They have more than 50% of digital. I suspect Ian's very close again. So the figure I had, we might have been looking at similar figures with a different global ad spend, but I had 26% for their global ad spend. Yeah, 26% market share in 2020. So that's absolutely phenomenal for this industry. Advertising is centuries old. There's probably never been a time in the 100 years of its history that there's been one player who's got more than 25% of global ad spend. So absolutely amazing accomplishment to use that data set to dominate one industry. But the thing we're talking about here is, I believe we're about to enter the AI era, and AI is going to be foundational technology in all industries. And it's possible that that massive data set Google has acquired, that amazing machine learning capability, means it can plug into all industries and become utterly dominant and beyond. Oh, I have a little freeze here. Okay, apologies. I'll stop sharing and see what's going on there. Okay. No, apologies for that. So the Google machine. So we're at the cusp of the societal revolution. Google has already dominated advertising with this data set. Us as an industry, by the way, are the first people to experience this. So if Google is the most advanced AI company in the world, us as digital marketers will be the first people to get very good at working with AI. And then that's going to be felt in other industries. So this means that the skill set of the digital marketer has to evolve. So I started learning, my digital marketing career started, I went for a job in Google back in 2007, didn't get it, but I fell in love with Google Ads. I said, this is the best advertising the world's ever seen, so I taught myself. So the job of the digital marketer from 2007 right up to 2019 was, the tasks were keyword optimizations, ad text optimizations, bidding optimizations, moving budget around. But 2020 was the first year that Google's AI campaigns outperformed humans. So Sundar said in 2017, they're now an AI first company. It took till 2020 for their technology to catch up with their vision. So those AI enabled campaigns, they've been around as long as I've been doing it, and they were always shite. They would very rarely beat human made campaigns, but they were getting slightly better all the time. And 2020 was the first year where we were like, more often than not, seeing, okay, that the smart campaigns, the AI enabled campaigns, are actually doing a better job than the humans are. So what do the humans do now? So it begets some really interesting questions. So Google has this incredible advertising machine now that you can just go to and plug in. This is the outcome I want. This is the return on ad spend I want. Go get that for me. But you, as a marketer, and all your competitors have access to the same machine. So what's the point of differentiation? So at Wolfgang Digital, we really believe it's the human who's steering the machine. The better job you can do steering the machine, better the outputs of the machine will be. So how on earth do you steer it? So We believe those tasks that were happening up till now, the keyword ops, the ad text ops, just leave them to the machine. It can do an infinitely better job on those. But now, what can we do is we can feed the machine with really good first-party data. So for example, if we have email lists, we can upload them and ask the machine to target these people or target lookalikes. So we're giving the machine good information to go and do better digital marketing. If we have profitability by product, so this is a lot of our awards that we won would have been using these techniques I'm sharing with you now. So all your competitors are using the machine to optimize for revenue. We found a way to upload profitability on products to the machine and get the machine to go out and optimize based on profitability. So you're in a whole different world of commercial wins, and you can do that. I spoke to you earlier about how we can now track how online activity influences in-store sales. Again, that's great first-party data that you can upload to the machine. Then for all your competitors, the machine's optimizing for website sales only, but then for you, the machine's optimizing for website and in-store sales. So these are some of the examples of how you can use first-party data to steer the machine to make sure it's working harder for you than it is your competitors. So that's how the tasks of the digital marketer is changing. Alongside that, the language of marketing is changing, particularly around results, particularly around the KPI. So in Wolfgang Digital, our favorite metric is ROAS, it's return on ad spend. It's like return on investment. Very simply, it tells us for every euro I spent on advertising, I got €8 back in revenue, €9 back in revenue. So we did an analysis on how ROAS changed between 19 and 20. And we found that Facebook ROAS increased by 30%, which is really good. It's 30% more profitable than it was a year ago. But Google's more than double that. Google's ROAS increased by 73% year on year. And the difference is, we're pretty sure it's that machine, just taking all those signals into account, like in the video, and making really good bets on which clicks have a purchase, have euros at the end of it. So this language of return on ad spend, this is unique to digital marketers. So the language of the traditional marketer is the language of brand lift. It's the language of share of voice. The language of the digital marketer is the language of revenue lift. It's the language of market share. So I think it's fair to say that the traditional marketer, the language of the traditional marketer is more at home on Madison Avenue. The language of the digital marketer is more at home on Wall Street. Very different ways of talking about marketing. Now, we could argue till the cows come home about which is more valuable, but everybody can agree that the person who holds the purse strings, she or he speaks Wall Street, okay? And we've witnessed this time and time again over the years. When we start equipping our clients with ROAS metrics, and they're reporting up to board level with ROAS, return on investment type metrics, they get a lot more attention from the decision makers, the CFO and the CEO. They get a lot more respect from the CFO and the CEO. And typically what happens then is they get a lot more budget from the CFO and the CEO. So we've witnessed this play out multiple times over the years. So the evolving language, when all these parties start speaking the same language, they're getting to good decisions faster. So the final one, 2021 is the beginning of the first party data era. So what is first party data? It's a real buzzword that's getting kicked around a lot now. I described Google amassing this massive data set. That's their data. So that's what it's third party, it's someone else's data. When we have an email list or we have in-store sales data, that's our data. So that's first party data. So just like Google has become one of the most valuable companies in the world, amassing their data set, up till now what digital marketers, they've just been renting that. They've just been saying, yeah, we'll buy your clicks and will you target that to the right person and we'll get the conversion. There's push and pull factors, which mean that's not going to work as well anymore. And it's really incumbent on us as digital marketers to start gathering, cleansing, and managing first-party data. So the pull factor is, as I've described, to make the machine work harder for you than it does for your competitors. The best thing you can do is feed it really good information. But there's also push factors and the increased regulation. Europe likes to break a record every year by hitting Google with a massive fine. And they're really trying to disrupt the Google business model and the Facebook business model, and particularly around this collection of data. And this is making it, you know, Google have come out and said, this is really unusual. They've said that they've had to adjust their killing cookies, which means the targeting and measurement method for all advertisers the world over is going away. Google have invented something new called flock, which is how they're going to do it. And it's not so bad for them, but it's flocking awful for all the competition. It really undermines how everybody outside Google and Facebook target and track digital marketing. But Google have come out and said that our targeting is going to be initially 5% worse than it was. So if you're a digital marketer in 2021, when Google kills the cookies and we move to flock, if you're doing the same thing you were doing last year, you can expect worse results. So it's incumbent on us to, so the digital marketers who win are going to say, okay, like depending on Google for that third-party data, that's a losing battle. That's going to get a little bit worse year on year on year on year on year. It's incumbent on us to start building our own first-party data so we can be driving the machine with a bit more force and a bit more accuracy, and to continue to outmarket the competition. So that's everything I have for you today. If you want to keep up to date what we have to say, and we do a monthly newsletter, people really like it. You can sign up for it on any page on our website, and that's the best place to keep up to date with Wolfgang Digital. Any of you who are studying in DCU, at the moment we're just working on our graduate program, but we fully expect to be recruiting people prior to you guys graduating. So if you want to hear about it when we have information, email your CV and a cover letter to graduate@wolfgangdigital.com. That's graduate@wolfgangdigital.com. So that's everything for me. Thanks very much for being a great audience and your participation in the Q&A.
That's great. Thanks very much, Alan. Just to say, if anyone, hopefully they didn't miss Sharon Burke's from DCU's Careers Officer talk at 1 to 2, which was giving you help about how to craft your CV and your cover letter for such opportunity. So thanks, Alan, for sharing that. So it is at this point, we're going to open it up to Q&A. So I will go, if you've got questions, please submit them. You can submit them anonymously too. So I suppose I'll start with, well, a couple of things. I don't know which is more nefarious, Wolfgang's secret projects or Google's secret projects, but you've redeemed yourself with the reforestation. So I suppose, and I don't know if Larry and Sergey would appreciate the archive photos that you've dug up on them. So I would just say, so let me start with what the flock. So how can companies really gather and harness? See, ultimately capturing customer data will rely on some kind of third party, either service or storage, right? So I don't know, how do you see that kind of playing out in terms of, you know, ultimately it's not first, it might be generated as first party, but ultimately it may become shared, or you're relinquishing your rights to it somehow.
So it's a whole new world, isn't it? So it in a way, it feels like we're moving more towards permission-based marketing. You know, like you need to get a consent off people to get their email. You need to get them to tick a box to even be able to communicate with them with that email. So that's very different than how it's been done up to date. So I think what's going to happen, so if we're talking about e-commerce, in the context of e-commerce, typically for most e-commerce merchants, there's one conversion and it's a sale. You know, we either made a sale or we didn't. That's the conversion. I think what a lot of retailers, e-commerce merchants are going to do now is they're going to say, well, we need a micro conversion, even if someone, like maybe 2% of the people who come to the website buy something. But geez, if we get an email address off 10% of them, that really helps us. We're building a list there. So I think there has to be some sort of a value exchange. So the example for us is we do a monthly newsletter and we put a lot of effort into it. And then if people like what we have to say, you know, we'll get their email address and permission to market to them.
Okay.
So I think that's going to become an area of marketing. There's the permission, get the email. We're going to give you something useful, something valuable, just so we have the email and we can talk to you more freely.
Sure. Okay.
Yeah.
We actually just have one question, and it's on the grad program. I'll just push it to the screen. It said, can we send CVs and cover letters now or wait until a hiring announcement has been made?
Send them now. So sorry, with the email address there is to register your interest, send it now. And then once we have an announcement on places and more details around the scheme itself, then we'll be able to engage in conversation.
Okay, great. Thanks, Alan. All right, so questions coming in here. Okay, so you can probably see them too, Alan. So the first one there is, hi, Wolfgang. It's not you don't have a German name, Wolfgang. Brilliant talk. Love your company, but as with many featured all staff photos look so young. So as I am a marketer of many years, hitting my decade of being the biggest spend factor, 60, but still 20 at heart, and still think on the cutting edge, is my knowledge and understanding going to be important in companies like yours? And beside the graduates, any room for work or retirement graduates or interns?
Okay, great question. So yeah, it is, it does tend to be a younger industry. I think the industry became, so there's a lot of talk now how traditional marketing was more of an extrovert. It was a people's person type of job. Then with digital marketing, it was all about the numbers. It was like, don't talk to me, I'm not going to buy you a cup of coffee. I'm not going to take you to a restaurant or a gig. I'm just going to give you the results. And what's happening now is it's having to cycle back towards being an extrovert, because when the machine's doing a lot of the work, a lot of the job, the role of the human is to be the go-between between the client and the machine to make sure the machine's getting that. So if someone's been a marketer of many years, I think what they'll find is they might have found like digital marketing was a different skill set and was getting away from them for some time. I think the skill set is now coming back. And a lot of the stuff that traditional marketers would have been very good at will become more valuable as time goes on.
Sure. Yeah. We have a question here from Owen. From your experience, are companies rapidly altering their viewpoint from the traditional viewpoint where e-commerce may be considered an add-on to flagship stores to the e-commerce centric approach? Or are a lot of organizations still resisting this change? So kind of back to
great question, Owen. If you asked me this in January 2020, I'd be like pulling what left of my hair was out. I'd be saying, it's so frustrating that some of the biggest companies are like Pennies just refuse to have an online presence. But look at you now, Pennies. But yeah, the reality is now, Owen, is like, if they haven't gotten online at this stage, I wouldn't hold out much hope for them because they haven't done any business in 12 months. Or there's other very large Irish retailers who are just very slow, like Dunnes Stores is another example. Just for whatever reason, weren't able to quite grasp it, and it's really damaged them in these circumstances. So I think what we've learned in Wolfgang was, when you talk about the boardroom who make the decisions, digital was always something that was in every month they'd meet, and somewhere in any other business there was this thing digital, and they might get to it or they might not. What's happened over the last 12 months is the first thing they talk about when they sit down is digital, and they're they're having to become comfortable with the language of digital. So yeah, I think lots of companies now, their website's the very center of their offering, be they e-commerce or otherwise.
We have another question. Do you think the end of third-party data will see a shift back to email?
Yeah, great question. Yes, yeah, absolutely. Like, it's gas, isn't it? Email was in the 1971 when it was, the internet was a US government invention. They're like, how do we take this thing and make it useful? And they put projects out to tender, like, who can do something that makes this useful? And some computer scientists said, oh, well, you've got information there and there, but we could make messages go from there to there. And now it's kind of given its soul, like there's a human interaction. So emails are around since 1971. Does that make them 50? Yeah. So email's 50 years old. And
the original social network almost,
sorry?
It's the original social network almost. And it's not something that regularly changes over time. Most people still have their first, unless the provider went,
yes,
generally
exactly.
required. But it's like the phone number, it's not, you don't change it.
It's so robust, and that's a really good point. They don't change it. Like cookies, cookies might be there for 30 days, they might be there for 60 days, but we've probably all got an email address from 10, 15 years ago. So I'm a big fan of email. Every year we put out a digital marketing KPI report, and normally it's like, win on Google, win online, Facebook's on the up and up, but every year email is the kind of quiet one that's in third position, just delivering traffic, delivering conversions month on month on month.
It's a very underutilized channel, I think. So we've one last question, Alan, and that is, with the rise in digital selling, and particularly during the pandemic, pushing companies to move to digital means, do you believe there will be pushback in a post-COVID world, a more human-based sales experience, or are there any more industries that might fall into this, but also fall out and fully embrace a digital sales model?
This is a really interesting question. So, like in Ireland pre-pandemic, I would say less than 20% of retail took place online anyway. So 80% was happening in store. Now, obviously, the vast majority is happening online. So what's going to happen? Like the bit that completely pulls the rug out from under everything is, I think we've just experienced urban to suburban migration. Like I spoke about the agricultural revolution 20,000 years ago. In all that time, up to the Industrial Revolution, all that time, up till February 2020, the most consistent sociological trend was rural to urban migration, most consistent. And we've just, for the first time, not just in decades, not just in centuries, the first time in millennia, we've just had a year of urban to suburban migration. So your local town is thriving and it's hopping. So I think that needs to settle. I wonder, once it'll be very interesting to see what happens then, when maybe we're all working 2 days from home and that's happening there. Because is there going to be a Lululemon in every town? Is there going to be, a Champions? I don't know. It's a great question.
Yeah,
it's one we're all scratching.
That's for another conference.
That's for another conference.
Yeah.
So my belief is there will be more. We were only at about 20% of sales online. We probably reached 80%. We're not going to say at 80, but I think we could be 30, 40, 50 when we get back to some sense of normality.
Can I ask you one last question? And I'm going to Adam's here. I'm going to paraphrase it. Disintermediation with AI tools being used, particularly in Google Ads. Is that something that agencies have to fear? And will you see then? I suppose Adam mentions the search term report, for example. You'll see these things being deprecated or totally removed over time. Is that a concern? I wonder.
100%. So Adam, like that slide I had where I had the market life cycle, and I was speaking how now that there's maturity there, like, so Google's saying, right, well, who's spending money on digital marketing? They're spending money on SEO. Let's remove visibility there and try and get them to spend that money on ads. If you want visibility in your keywords, spend money on ads. And they're even in a situation now where they're trying to say, oh, you're spending money on digital marketers' salary. Don't spend that money. We'll automate it all. Just send it direct to us. So there's two kind of conflicting philosophies out there at the moment. There's the automate everything. You don't need people. Just set and forget. Tell the machine what you want, and off you go. Set and forget. And then there's the hybrid approach, which we believe, or the cyborg approach even, which we believe is the way to go. So the first kind of instance of what do they call it? The singularity, where the AI was cleverer than the humans, was when IBM's Deep Blue beat the world chess champion. And this is going back quite a while. And this was this moment of freak out. It's like, oh my God, Gary Kasparov was beaten by a computer. The world is over. Like, they're going to kill us all and our children. And what happened subsequent to that was there was chess leagues in which there was human players, there was AI players, and then there was cyborgs where a human used the AI. And what they found was the winners of the chess league was consistently the cyborgs. So the best outcomes are found when you have a human managing the machine. It's
the trade-off, I think, between human creativity and machine automation, speed, processing, that kind of thing. So I think that was one of the things in the chess example anyway.
Was that what it was? Yeah.
Yeah, the humans bring a degree of creativity, and if you want to call it out of the box thinking or something.
Yes.
Machine will just eventually probably learn.
Yeah.
I think that was that was a demarcation line anyway there, you know.
There, yeah. So that's it, Adam. It's a really good question. So what we're finding is, like I said, the skill set, like the keyword opt, you're not going to be doing that for an awful lot longer. But if you can get really good at CRM and pulling an email list and segmenting an email list and feeding that to the machine, now the machine's working harder for you. But yes, Google is trying to, all of them are trying, now that they're in a mature market, trying to eat everyone else's pie a little bit as well, to free up budget to spend on ads.
Great. I'll leave it there with the questions. Alan, that was tremendous. Thank you.
Thanks so much, David.
Before we wrap up, I just want to say, is there anything you want to plug? We had Rob and Micah came in a couple of weeks ago to do the e-commerce report. But is there anything you want to plug? Anything, any downloads that people should be looking at?
No, like everything that we have to say, we say every month in our newsletter.
Very good.
So that's the place to keep up to date with us. We do have a YouTube channel where we put out videos, but they'll be in the newsletter. So newsletter is the place to go.
Grand, great stuff. Thanks. So that's it, Alan. Thanks very much. Our next session is at 5, and it'll feature adventurer and mountaineer extraordinaire Hannah Shields. So that's at 5 o'clock. So stay tuned for that. My final thanks to you, Alan, and to everyone else for their questions and for participating. There's someone there. Ian, so well done again. Thanks very much, everyone, and thanks, Alan. I'll talk to you soon. Take care, everyone.
Guys.
Goodbye.
All the best. Bye-bye.